What is up, YouTube? And welcome to episode 93 of the Chaos Daily. So let's get into it. Yesterday, I'm sorry about that. It happens to us all. Something happens and we go a little bit crazy. But yeah. Anyways, let's get into it. A few guys made some comments about the previous episode. I just wanted to go over some of that because none of it had anything to do with what was going on. I don't think I explained it properly or something, but I've got some of your questions here. So Jack Sat, you wanted to know about if it was an issue with the orientation, with resin being trapped. I'm going to show you that just now. This is the same part that I tried to print yesterday, but this time I checked the file before I loaded it onto the USB to see that the slicer had sliced it correctly. So that's another thing somebody else brought up is file types and the process that I use. I'm going to go over that as well. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name on YouTube. It's Cyrillic, Russian, or Jaku, Prejislaw, Jakubjek. Yeah, sorry. So you mentioned something about file types and saving process. It's nothing to do with that. What happened is, like I said, it's the slicing software itself. So I start with the CAD model and then I export an STL. If I change the CAD model and I export the STL, I overwrite that STL. So there's only ever one STL for that part of the plane. If I make a revision to the design, it changes that part. So it's not a design revision change problem like you mentioned. So that's my save process. And then when you import the STL into Chitubox, which is the slicing software, you then have to orient it and then place your support materials and everything, and then you hit slice, and then it creates another file type. So there are two different file types. There is the Chitubox file type, which is basically it's like if you use Photoshop, right? You have a Photoshop file, and that's like how you created the image. It's the same thing. So the Chitubox file is a file that goes, okay, this is the STL that you use, this is the orientation it's in, this is the supports that you use for it, and it saves that setup, that scene. And then the second file type is the file that you load onto the machine. That is the sliced file. Now it is the sliced file. When it's sliced, that object with the supports and everything, when it creates that sliced file, that's where it corrupted it. It screwed it up. It did something wrong. And it wasn't an issue like Groggy Nod. You thought it was an issue with the USB and read writes and corrupted. No. I always save all of the files that I work on my computer so that I have them as a backup so that I can check them. Or if something goes wrong with the USB, I can always overwrite it and get back from a previous save. So the one I showed in the video yesterday was the one that was on my computer and is the same that was on the USB stick. So I know it wasn't a file corruption through like a SD card or a USB stick or something like that. It was purely the software itself that does the slicing. When it takes the 3D object and the supports and chops it up into the layers and turns it into little images and all the G code and creates that sliced file for the printer to use, that was corrupted. That was messed up. Back to Slaw. I'm going to call you Slaw or Jaku because I can't pronounce your name. You wanted to know about, I know you had a second question. Yeah, so heads or tails. So you want to know whether it would be better to print the objects more at like a 20-30 degree angle and print them on the leading edge rather than on the tailing edge. Now, the reason why I print them on the tailing edge is it's a fine, solid, consistent piece of material. It's much thicker, it's stronger. It's better to have consistent support across the tailing edge than it is on the leading edge. The leading edge is a very thin wall of 0.5 millimeter material, so it's not very good to have supports and having the rest of the part hanging on the leading edge. It's the same reason why I only put supports on the underside of the wing and not on the top surface, because of aerodynamic reasons. I want a much cleaner top surface. You don't have to worry about the underside of the wing being a bit more, rough or having little bumps or whatever from the support materials. And then some of the other issues, like you said, mentioned we should probably go back to like 20 to 30 degrees. We've come from there. So I'm using this now much flatter orientation because using a more angled attack, because I started vertical, remember, on the sides of the wing, on the wing sections. That didn't work. Then I moved to the tailing edge at almost 45 degrees. And I've been slowly bringing that angle down, both to reduce the print time and because it's actually better to print them at a much flatter angle. And also, get a resin printer. Like, what I'm doing is is bleeding edge. It's not typical resin printing. No one else is printing stuff like this. That's why I'm having so much trouble with this. This is groundbreaking, brand new, never been done before stuff. So that's why I'm having so much trouble. Printers like this, they will do everything else perfectly, right? Especially this Phenom. They're amazing printers. They're very reliable. Go get yourself a printer. Don't take what I'm doing and the failures that I'm having as an indication of how hard it is to use one of these printers, because it's not. It's what I'm doing that is hard, not the printing itself that is hard. All right, let's jump up in there, and I'm going to show Jack Sat all about the orientation and trap resin, because this orientation is quite flat, but I want to show you just how much resin is actually being trapped and where it's draining out on all these parts and why this isn't so much the issue that I was having. And we'll go into more depth on what exactly went wrong with that one yesterday, so you guys can see, because I really did not explain it very well. I just showed you a mess and I was angry, and anyways, so let's jump into the printer and have a look. All right, let's have a look at this. So, sorry for the camera being a bit unsteady. It's a little difficult to film inside here. So, all of this is trapped resin. Now, it's not a lot of trapped resin. If we bring the camera up to the side here, hopefully that will focus on what I want it to. Maybe not, but the level of that resin is only to like here. It's only this very last tiny bit of the part. It's probably only 2 or 3 millimeters of resin that are in the bottom there. Now, all along the side are holes. See all these holes here? This is where all the resin drains out of, all of those holes. And that's on both sides. And this part, that leading edge on the top surface there is quite flat. And this is because I wanted to get better printing from the layer, so that more of the layer is exposed rather than just that 0.5 millimeter. This is part of the reason for why we've gone to this much more flat orientation, is because I get more of a layer exposure rather than a very thin like slit of where the skin is. The skin is cut at an angle through the layer, and you get a larger exposure, you get better exposure. So the issue that I've been having is with bed adhesion. So you see here where the raft is peeled away, but because I'm now using this grid raft, you can see that the part itself, so you can see that even though that the raft has lifted off at the top here, the part itself is printed very nicely on that back edge, on that the aileron hinge. So I'll show you now just how much of that resin is actually trapped in there. And then I just let that sit and drain. So now there's much better print quality and print surface, both on the leading edge here and on this top surface. So this spot round about here is the highest point on the print. So this would be the last bit of the drain. So whatever the height of the resin in the vat is at the time when it prints this, that's the amount that will have pooled up in the inside here. So it's nothing to worry about with the weight of it pulling off the supports or anything like that. Perfect. So these new settings are spot on. It only took me 5 different prints, 6 total failures, and we now have perfect prints. Beautiful. And it came away cleanly as well. I'm super happy with that. All right, I'm going to get this cleaned up and in the UV chamber. So yeah, hopefully that helps clear up some of you guys' questions and suggestions. Thank you so much, by the way, for offering your help and advice and things. It wasn't useful, but you know, I appreciate it. I do. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the work that I'm doing with this is well outside of the normal way people print with resin printers. I'm not printing miniatures. I'm not printing props. I'm not doing like all the mainstream stuff that people use resin printers for. The reason why Peopoly and Siraya Tech are supporting my work is because I'm pushing the limits with thin wall printing, trying things out that aren't normally being printed with resin printers, to see what the technology is capable of. So a lot of the stuff that I do is outside of the box. It's way out of the box. The orientation stuff, like I would like, if you'd come to me 2 months ago and said, you need to print these things flat, almost flat, with the build plate. I would have laughed at you, because no, you print stuff either upright or an orientation. Like, you need to let the resin drain out, and like, I didn't know then that there are certain other mechanical properties of the resin printing process that are involved. And by mechanical properties, I mean the motion of the print moving up and down, the photon effects of like narrow slits. When you're trying to expose a layer with very thin walls, and you're trying to push a certain amount of UV light through very thin exposures, through very thin masks, and trying to push as much UV light through those thin little slits, versus leaning something over and slicing that very thin wall at an angle so that you have a wider exposure, so that you get much cleaner UV exposure to the resin in that area, and it will come away from the print bed better. A lot of it is a little bit counterintuitive. It's stuff that I would have not have tried doing at the beginning, and I'm trying it now because I've tried all of the regular conventional methods that haven't been working. Also, like, working with Siraya Tech and Peopoly to nail in my print settings. My print settings aren't normal at all. Like, they're pretty close to the baseline, but I have to do things differently because of the mechanical function of resin printing. When the print is moving up and down, when it's peeling away from the print bed, because I've got such thin walls, the part is affected by that motion in different ways. So there's a lot going on that you wouldn't normally consider. So yeah, but again, thank you so much for you guys' help and suggestions. I do appreciate it. So yeah, we'll leave it there for today's episode. I've got the part in the UV curing chamber. I'm going to go edit this now and figure out what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm going to work on the new video for the new channel some more. That's pretty close. Like, I just have to do some voiceover stuff for it, and I don't know, well, I'll watch it a few more times and see what I think. But we're getting close to another episode going on the new channel, which I'm super excited about, and I hope you guys are excited about too. So yeah, we'll leave it there for today's episode. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you're not. As always, I've been Chaos. And until next time, expect the unexpected, and I will see you guys later.
And a special thank you to all my patrons that help support the channel. If you would also like to support the channel, there's a link in the description.